Perfect. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Guayaquil Space Society webinar. We're very excited to have you all here. This is in collaboration with CEN, Centro Ecuatoriano Norteamericano. And we're very excited to start today with two amazing guests. And just so you know, the Guayaquil Space Society is a chapter of the National Space Society from the United States. And we're based in Ecuador, and we're looking to promote important space values about how space is very important in our lives. And this is a very important discussion, the topic that we have today planned about space advocacy. In this case, how we can get the government excited about space policy, and what responsibilities do we have as citizens and as organizations in making this happen, in having that voice, having that opinion. So I think it's a really relevant topic, and we have two important experts in industry to be able to participate today. I just want to say, as we start, welcome to the city of Guayaquil. We definitely hope, if you're not from here, that you can visit sometime. We are a very welcoming place, very exciting. The food is amazing, and we definitely hope that Tim, our guest, can come here soon. And again, thanks to Otero Verde for hosting us today from their offices here. And we're very excited for them because they're doing an amazing job in promoting hospitality in Ecuador with incredible standards of service. So if you definitely come to Ecuador, you have to stay in one of their hotels. It's just something really, really amazing. So for today, we have planned two really exciting guests. The first one is Victor Gurado. Victor works for the Cámara Italiana Americana. That's the Italian Chamber of Commerce here in Ecuador. And it's very exciting from his experience, because he comes from the public sector background, about the work that he has done, in this case, in promoting commercial activities with the government, treaties for free trade, as well as advocating, in this case, how different industries can get support and then the necessary push from the government, in this case, for trade issues. So it's a very interesting perspective. And then we will have as a guest Tim Chrisman, who is the founder of the Foundation for the Future, which is a new organization that has done an amazing job in the last couple of years, positioning itself as one of the leaders, in this case, of promoting space policy and working with the United States in some amazing projects about what is necessary for development of the human race to be able to reach space in a successful manner, where definitely economics and politics and strategic planning plays a key role in making it happen, in integrating the basic infrastructure needs, thinking about capital, thinking about human development to make this happen. So without much ado, I definitely want to introduce first Victor. Victor Gurado, welcome. We're so glad that you're here with us. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank Centro Ecuatoriano Norteamericano and the Guayaquil Space Society, and of course you for the invitation. Let me share screen. Okay. There we are. So, voy a hacer la presentación en español, tal vez facilidad a la audiencia. Creo que Tim, I think Tim maybe, I don't know if you have any problem, but I will try the presentation in Spanish. Then we could, I don't know, share some ideas and so on in English. Okay, thank you for the invitation. No? Yes, I'm a part of the Ecuadorian Italian Chamber of Commerce. That's the whole name, todo el nombre. Y como bien menciona Robert, bueno, mi expertise no es tanto en temas aplicados de la ciencia espacial, sino un doble background. Por un lado, una experiencia desde el sector privado, ¿cierto? Tratando con el sector público, en términos de precisamente esto, de generar los intereses o las evaluaciones de proyectos, como llamamos nosotros, para con, sorry. Sorry, it's my dog, Luca. His name is Luca. So,
No worries, we love dogs.
yeah, it's part of home working, home office. So, la experiencia en términos del sector privado, presentando proyectos y trabajando con el Estado. Y luego tuve la oportunidad de estar del otro lado de la moneda, en la otra cara de la moneda, que es ser parte también del gobierno, de los estamentos del Estado, y tomar en consideración estas iniciativas del sector privado para luego hacer política pública, lo que se llama política pública. Entonces, congelo, pero ahí vamos. Bueno, este es el core de la presentación. Son solo unas ideas que quiero mencionarlas y luego obviamente discutirlas con la audiencia. Entonces sí, ¿no? Esta idea de la investigación espacial, de las tecnologías espaciales, bueno, ¿cómo lo involucramos al gobierno, ¿no? Y yo voy a empezar in media res, voy a empezar por el final probablemente, ¿no? Con esta conclusión, que realmente es la conclusión de mi intervención, pero la pongo también al inicio. Es solamente es solamente necesario interesar al gobierno. Yo les dejo esa inquietud y voy a expresar, vamos a compartir algunas ideas para luego cada quien pueda hacerse su conclusión. Si es que el computador avanza. Ya para esta hora todo se pone lento, ¿no? Entonces, algunos pasos hay que dar, definitivamente. Yo creo que uno de los primeros es desmitificar sus implicaciones. Muchas veces cuando hablamos de estos temas, en algunas instancias, bien sea del gobierno, incluso de la empresa privada y de la academia, creen que es science fiction. Entonces, no es ciencia ficción, ¿sí? Son aplicaciones reales para procesos actuales. Esto es el primer mito que tenemos que romper. Yo creo que es uno de los primeros pasos que debemos dar. ¿Para qué? Para evidenciar la aplicabilidad. La aplicabilidad, todo lo que implica la investigación del espacio. No solamente lo emocionante que puede ser, como fue hace pocos días, estos viajes de turismo espacial y los nuevos desarrollos de cohetes reutilizables, etcétera, sino ya en situaciones del día a día, como por ejemplo aplicaciones para monitoreo del medio ambiente, contaminación ambiental, predicción y monitoreo de desastres naturales, inundaciones, terremotos. Acá mismo, pongo el ejemplo de Guayaquil, pero podría ser el Ecuador entero, ¿no? Cada cierto tiempo, de tanto en tanto, cada mes, viene alguna alerta no muy fundamentada, no muy accurate, de caída de ceniza por alguno de los volcanes de nuestra cordillera y posible cierre de aeropuerto y tal. Esto se puede hacer mucho más preciso, mucho más accurate, precisamente con aplicación de tecnología espacial, de observación de la Tierra. Son aplicaciones que estoy tratando de buscar del día a día. Rastreo satelital, porque otra vez, ¿no? Pensamos que esto de la tecnología espacial es de aquí en adelante, es nuevo, es algo que no hay en el país, y ya hay una empresa que tiene 25 años en el país haciendo rastreo satelital de los autos, ¿no? Para el robo de los autos. Entonces, esa es una aplicación concreta digamos, para el día a día. Manejo de tránsito, control de velocidades en las carreteras, todo el tema de Smart Cities, que es muy amplio, también a través de tecnología satelital, de tecnología espacial, agricultura de precisión, no se diga, por aquí hay una beta enorme para nuestro país, que tiene una gran vocación agrícola de exportación, la necesidad o la búsqueda de competitividad, bueno, tal vez esté en la aplicación de alguna de estas tecnologías que los logren catapultar a tener menores costos y mayores rendimientos. Explotación de recursos, estoy refiriéndome al tema minería, petróleo, etcétera, ¿no? Cómo a través de la tecnología satelital podemos hacerlo sin afectar tanto el tema medioambiental, el tema de la flota pesquera, no se diga temas de seguridad, monitoreo, cámaras, ubicación de ciertos actores claves o de mucho riesgo, telecomunicación, educación. Ahora leía una noticia hace 1 o 2 semanas en Chile, ¿no? Este piloto que están haciendo con la malla de satélites para dotar al 100% de Internet áreas urbanas y rurales, ¿no? Esto como un impulso a la teleeducación. Estamos viviéndolo ahora, ¿no? La pandemia y sus efectos, uno de ellos es precisamente la necesidad de Internet. En la misma ciudad a veces es deficiente, no se diga en los sectores rurales donde han quedado muy lejos en términos de educación. Podemos brindarle una solución a través de algo tan sofisticado como es el tema de la tecnología espacial, telemedicina y etcétera. ¿No? Póngale ahí, complete la diapositiva. Podemos seguir hablando toda la noche solamente de aplicaciones. ¿Cuál es otro de los pasos que hay que dar? Lo pongo aquí en una frase. Tenía una imagen ahí que la terminé sacando, pero básicamente este impulso debe darse desde las empresas privadas. Ese es mi criterio. ¿Por qué lo digo? Porque, bueno, estábamos pensando que debe el gobierno interesarse en el asunto, pero la iniciativa tiene que venir de la empresa privada, tanto de la demandante como de la ofertante. ¿A qué me refiero con esto? Vimos acá, y pueden ustedes imaginarse, algunos sectores de la economía, agricultura, pesca, acuacultura, urbanismo, seguridad, gobierno, educación, medicina, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. Una serie de sectores que son los demandantes de esta tecnología, que probablemente la desconocen. Esto es poco conocido acá en nuestro país todavía. Y por otro lado, los ofertantes. Quienes ya tienen desarrollado esto, no necesitamos empezar de cero, no hay que inventar la rueda nuevamente. Hay que más bien apalancarse ya en las tecnologías creadas para de ahí desarrollar otras cosas. También hacerse presente. Entonces, esa frase que les he puesto ahí como tema, la mejor vocería y defensa proviene de quienes emplean la tecnología. Al final, en esta necesidad de hacer, de gestionar, podríamos decirlo, ¿no? De influir en la idea de los hacedores de política para que se incluyan temas de investigación del espacio, de diplomacia espacial, etcétera, ya vamos a hablar de eso también, va o pasa por que los usuarios de la tecnología, entiéndase la empresa privada, demandante y ofertante, lo hagan, lo puedan sustentar ante el gobierno. Y esto que conversábamos ahí, Robert y Tim, and some pictures about these guys, these 3 guys, ¿no? Estos son como los nuevos 3 mosqueteros de la investigación espacial. En el último mes, en los últimos meses han dado noticias. También hay que subirnos en la ola, ¿no? Subirnos en la ola. Estas tres empresas, digamos, personajes, pero más allá de ellos, lo que está atrás, la empresa y sus iniciativas, nos marcan una evolución importante en el término de lo que se llama ahora la economía espacial. Es un término que no es acuñado por mí, ya es un término que se utiliza por las Naciones Unidas y por, digamos, todos los organismos internacionales de economía espacial. Y cómo esto da un giro, ¿no? Del impulso que fue siempre muy fuerte y abanderado por las agencias espaciales gubernamentales, digamos, por los estados al final del día, los gobiernos, y cómo ahora esto va dando un giro conversábamos antes de arrancar el seminario, el webinar, esta conversación, que era como un relanzamiento, ¿cierto?, para las nuevas generaciones, tal vez ya para la mía no lo es tanto, porque bueno, estábamos todavía tenemos un entusiasmo anterior, pero yo veo a mis hijas, veo a mis sobrinos, y obviamente ya el entusiasmo por la investigación espacial y la aplicación de estas tecnologías era, digamos, bastante colateral. Hoy en día, solo con estos personajes que están ahí en pantalla, se ha retomado. Entonces también hay que subirnos en esa ola de que esto no se trata otra vez como decía en la primera diapositiva, de un sueño, sino de cosas que se pueden ir dando y de resultados prácticos y concretos con aplicación real. Finalmente, todo esto debe decantar en una evaluación del impacto. Cuando estábamos en el sector público, la medición que se hacía era así. O sea, cualquier proyecto, desde una carretera, una escuela, una nueva torre de teléfono celular o lo que fuere, tiene que pasar por un análisis más o menos como el que está acá, ¿no? Es obviamente más profundo, tiene muchos indicadores, etcétera. Básicamente, generación de divisas. Ahí le he puesto 5 indicadores, pero es básicamente evaluar el impacto del proyecto. Generación de divisas. ¿Cuándo el gobierno, cuándo los gobernantes, respondiendo a la pregunta inicial, comenzarán a atender con más concentración este tema? Cuando entiendan que detrás de esta industria, de este negocio, hay miles de millones de dólares que podrían servir para el desarrollo del país en términos de generación de divisas. Yo tengo un ejemplo más adelante que es el de Italia, porque, bueno, al final del día es la Cámara Ecuatoriana Italiana, pero les traje el ejemplo de Italia para que lo vean ya en la práctica. Entonces, no solamente convertirse en una situación de uso de tecnologías, que está perfecto, sino cómo a través de ese uso de tecnologías podemos generar más divisas, empleo, no se diga, generación de empleo, nuevas plazas o plazas más calificadas, mejor pagadas, etcétera. Mejora la competitividad, ya lo conversamos, en los sectores productivos actuales, sean industriales, sean agrícolas, e incluso en los de los generales, los que tendrían incidencia colateral. ¿No? Hablábamos del tráfico en las ciudades, del control de tráfico en las carreteras, etc. Todo eso puede ayudar a mejorar la competitividad. ¿Te imaginas si a través de esta, bueno, ahora que hemos vivido un par de conatos de cierre de carreteras por algunos productores agrícolas, etcétera, ¿no? Como el reordenar ese tráfico por las vías digamos, alternas, podría ser mucho más sencillo a través de esta tecnología. Y podría ser inmediato, ¿no? A través de este aparatito, de tu teléfono, de tu smartphone, poder tener, o en el dispositivo, que ahora casi la mayoría de los vehículos lo tienen, nuevos al menos, puedas redireccionar tu ruta. En términos de crecimiento del PIB, de impacto fiscal, no en términos de costo, bueno, también del costo, sino en términos de todo lo que va a generar para el fisco. Esto suena feo, pero al final del día, más actividad económica, más consumo, más generación de empleo, etcétera. Todo eso implica también generación de impuestos. O sea, por un lado, costos fiscales por adecuaciones, qué sé yo, o exenciones que se van a otorgar, pero por otro lado también el ingreso. Y el tema de la inversión es fundamental. Nada de esto se va a poder hacer si es que no hay inversión privada, bien sea extranjera o nacional. Dependiendo del tamaño de los proyectos, ¿no? Desde lo más grande, digamos, como podría ser un puerto espacial, como el proyecto que tiene Robert, hasta cosas más pequeñas como simplemente la aplicación de tecnología de rastreo satelital para el manejo de la oxigenación de las piscinas de camarones, en las camaroneras que ustedes saben están en el Golfo, zonas de Golfo, no hay playa, que es difícil acceso. Entonces, con el satélite puedes monitorear, dependiendo de la temperatura, color y bueno, algunos análisis de espectro que se hacen ahí, determinar si necesitan o no oxigenar, si necesitan o no alimentos, si necesitan o no cambiar el agua, etcétera, y automatizar. Entonces, todo eso es inversión, finalmente alguien tiene que poner el dinero para esa tecnología y normalmente es el privado, bien sea local o extranjero. Entonces, antes de avanzar, aquí es interesante recapitular. Siempre que se va a necesitar una vocería, se va a necesitar generar la discusión, eso es un poco lo que yo digo, generar la masa crítica de la discusión, un gran esfuerzo, un ejemplo de aquello es lo que hace Robert y Zen con estos webinars, con estas actividades, un poco ir generando generándole la sinergia al movimiento. Luego es el tema de evaluación. Entonces tenemos que comenzar a todas estas iniciativas, comenzar a ponerle métrica, para con esa métrica poder llegar directo a los hacedores de política, digo yo. Y para que esa métrica que se construya, digamos, sea creíble, validada o escuchada con real interés, tiene que venir soportada de los usuarios de la tecnología, como yo decía. Es decir, más allá de que se pueda calcular desde la academia, desde los que tenemos los proyectos, etcétera, debe ser soportada por los pilotos, por los primeros pasos que se dan. Veía también las noticias hace unas 3 semanas, un mes, de una empresa bananera ecuatoriana que ya había un poco lanzado el tema de un satélite y bueno, invertido en un tema de monitoreo de sus plantaciones a través de satélites y tal. Entonces ahí comienzas a ver que ellos van a generar data dura en términos no solo de su negocio, que eso lo manejan ellos, sino de KPI, ¿no? De indicadores de gestión que puedan luego decirle, mira, hacedor de políticas, gobierno, prefectura, colegas de la competencia, al hacer esta inversión me implicó para mí un rendimiento, una mejora en el rendimiento de mis producciones del tanto por ciento, con una disminución de costos de tanto, y por lo tanto con una utilidad mayor, ¿no? Entonces comienzas y nuevos empleos y mejor condición de vida, lo que fuere, los indicadores que se tengan que ir armando. Esto que le digo no es tan soñado, no es tan teórico como tal vez alguno está pensando. Le hice aquí un capture de pantalla y está el enlace que ustedes después pueden entrar para descargarse el libro. Esta es la página de la OSD, donde ya tienes un boletín, un reporte anual del Space Economy, básicamente en números, ¿no? Entonces aquí tú, si te descargas el documento, un poco pesado, pero de descargar, aquí el link está habilitado, entras a la página de la OCDE y ahí vas a ver algunas métricas que ellos ya están llevando, ¿no? Habrá que ver cuál de estas aplica para mejor para el sector y para el país, digámoslo así, ¿no? Pero ya está esto monitoreado, trajeado, no es solamente, como les digo, no es ciencia ficción, como veíamos en la primera diapositiva, sino ya es parte de un análisis económico mundial. ¿Qué estamos haciendo nosotros para entrar entonces en esta ola, o nos estamos quedando de esta ola? Es ahí ese es el cuestionamiento que debemos hacernos. Con este antecedente, que yo sé que ya lo conversaron en un webinar anterior, pero lo traigo a colación por un tema. Voy a marcar acá, voy a sacar un lapicero. Bueno, estos son los 10 capítulos o pilares de estos de los acuerdos de Artemisa, ¿no? Artemis Accord. Hay 12 países que son signatarios de este acuerdo, son 12 agencias espaciales, básicamente para colaborar y trabajo conjunto para temas pacíficos. Estamos hablando de investigación espacial, transparencia, compartir la información unos con otros, interoperabilidad para, no sé si ustedes recuerdan esta película de esta astronauta que tiene que retornar luego en emergencia, no recuerdo el nombre de la película, en emergencia de la atmósfera, y bueno, se cambia en la estación espacial del módulo norteamericano al módulo chino, al módulo ruso, y cada módulo era diferente, no había como, no entendía ella los comandos, era parte del drama de la película. Pero bueno, eso se soluciona con interoperabilidad. Asistencia en las emergencias, bueno, esa fue una emergencia precisamente, ¿no? Eso también ya está normándose. El registro de los objetos espaciales, básicamente todo lo que se envía al espacio tiene que estar inventariado, por decirlo de alguna forma. La data científica que se produce tiene que compartirse. La protección de los sitios históricos, estos, digamos, etcétera. Pero es aquí donde mira, los desechos orbitales, etcétera, ¿no? Es en esto que me quiero centrar, que no se marca aquí. Esto. Y le vuelvo a hacer otro círculo, y le vuelvo a hacer otro círculo. El Space Resources. Porque ese capítulo de este acuerdo, que como todo acuerdo de estos, digamos, elaborado a la manera anglosajona, es bien al grano, ¿no? Son 18 páginas, es bien concreto. En ese capítulo de los Space Resources se comienza a normar ya el tema de la explotación de recursos, inicialmente en la Luna, que es el paso 1, y luego en el espacio en general. Entonces, aquí ya no estamos hablando de la posibilidad o no de hacer viajes fuera del país o de utilizar tecnología, sino ya de explotación de recursos. Entonces, la pregunta es, ¿nos queremos quedar afuera de esto? En términos de la búsqueda del desarrollo y de la generación de bienestar para nuestros ciudadanos. ¿No será esto otro vagón más u otro ferrocarril más que se nos está pasando? Todavía estamos discutiendo los tratados de la Convemar, de la Convención del Mar, ¿no? No estamos ni siquiera del espacio, del mar, ¿no? Algo con lo que hemos convivido tanto durante tantos años, recién intentando normar esto, y el Ecuador, bueno, nos quedamos mucho tiempo atrás para la Convemar, lo principal, uno de los capítulos importantes de la Convemar, no voy a decir que es el único, uno de los importantes, es precisamente el aprovechamiento de los recursos del subsuelo marino, ¿no? Todavía tenemos algunos acá que se oponen a ese tema, no estamos como los que se oponen a la vacuna. No voy a hablar más porque puede generar polémica eso, pero bueno, ciencia versus creencia, ¿no? Entonces acá igual, queremos quedarnos al margen de este tema del aprovechamiento de los recursos espaciales, de todo sentido, ¿eh? de todo lo que pueda generarse, que esto es muy amplio. Cuidado. Entonces ahí tal vez ahí tenemos otra razón más para comenzar a mirar como gobierno, poder interesar a los gobiernos en comenzar a analizar y ver también estos temas, ¿no? Solo un último ejemplo para poner encima, ya les puse el de la Convención del Mar. El otro ejemplo que podría hacerse un símil es el tema de la investigación y la explotación en la Antártida, ¿no? También ahí el Ecuador llegó también, bueno, un poquito tarde, pero llegamos también, ¿no? Estación científica y etcétera. Ahora está eso un poco abandonado, pero podemos hacer ahí un símil también de esto que les estoy mencionando. Entonces, para un poco ir cerrando, porque yo me gusta hablar y me voy de largo, es el tema de los 3 pilares, que esto ya es como fundamental, siempre lo hemos dicho, ¿no? Academia, Estado y empresa privada. Entonces, a la pregunta inicial de solamente Estado o solamente gobierno, hay que enamorarlo, hay que convencer, hay que defender el proyecto ante el gobierno, sí, pero yo creo que este podría ser un estadio 3 de esta triada, ¿no? Entre empresa privada y academia hay que construir el camino para poder llegar ante el gobierno con una visión un poco más sólida, una defensa más sólida, con una vocería más sólida, ¿no? Aquí en academia yo estoy incluyendo los que se llaman eh, podemos decir los influencers, como se dice ahora, ¿no? Digamos los que hacen opinión, como lo que estamos haciendo acá, ¿no? Está Robert, está el TEN, el Guayaquil Space Society, todos los miembros del Space Society, que un poco hacemos o digamos, traemos estos temas a la discusión. Lo he puesto como parte de la academia, formalmente no es la universidad, no es la academia, pero lo incluyo aquí por no poner un cuarto pilar. Y para cerrar, yo voy a compartir, aquí tengo un videito de 2 minutos, 3 minutos, con la experiencia de todo esto que les he dicho ya puesto en la práctica, digamos el producto final de la Agencia Espacial Italiana, la ASI, que se resume bien en este video bastante corto. Vamos a ver si logro que procese. Es que yo mismo me doy. Vamos un segundito, me salgo de acá. Estaba con enlace, pero como hombre precavido vale por 2, ya también tenía acá ahí está. ¿Se confirma? Bueno, el video cortesía de la Embajada de Italia, de la Agencia Espacial Italiana como vieron, del Ministerio de lo que ellos llaman la diplomacia científica, ¿no? Nada más. Hasta ahí mi intervención, perdón por haberme alargado mucho.
Victor, thank you. That was a wonderful presentation, a lot of great insights, and amazing that if you don't know Victor, Victor is also a university professor, so he has that special knowledge in teaching and sharing ideas and concepts. So it was very clear the message that you transmit about identifying those needs from supply and demand, who are going to be those actors pushing, and how do we make the government not only itself be the only target of this conversation, but the whole society, you know, all the stakeholders. And you mentioned something really, really cool that I really liked. And it made me wonder when you were talking about Ecuador thinking about space resources, you know, and Ecuador started thinking about what they have done so far in Antarctica with the missions that they have there, the base that they have built. And that brought me back in history, you know, back to the 1830s when Ecuador first got its independence. And one of the main things that they did at that time was that they went and they sailed to the Galapagos Islands and they planted a flag and they claimed the islands. And I think that is part of an interesting spirit of discovery, of entrepreneurship, and all the benefits. And to start thinking now of Ecuador, what it is without the Galapagos Islands, it's something very hard to comprehend because it's just part of its identity. You know, it's part of what it defines itself. And I think about thinking in the future is how we're going to be defined by all these new access and all these places that we have to go. So that's great, Victor. Thank you so much. So now I would like to introduce Tim. Tim, welcome. We're so glad that you're with us. Tim is the founder of the Foundation for the Future. He has an amazing background and experience that he can share in more detail, but he comes in this case working with security, with government organizations in the United States, and he has this insight, you know, about what is really important and exciting about how things develop and the best way to engage. And what he has done with his organization is something marvelous, and we're very glad of how he has been working with that. So, Tim, welcome. Thank you so much. And I see that somebody wants to ask a question, but please feel free to write the questions in the chat, and we'll get to those questions in shortly after the presentation, so we can have the Q&A. Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to be able to be here. I want to echo what you said about Victor's presentation. I understand only a little Spanish, but I still took away a handful of really important points that I just wanted to re-emphasize, because I think in general, the presentation covered sort of the breadth of opportunity that there is in the space economy. And I've heard it said that here in the near future, everyone will be part of the space economy. Every company will be a space company. They just don't know it yet. And that is probably already true when we think about how much space supplies in terms of imaging, global positioning, and the like. But what we're seeing now is a lowering of the bar to entry. And so when you hear things like there's opportunity in space resources, that there is a chance to sort of seize these moments, it almost sounds like it's something from a movie, that it's science fiction. But when schools are able to launch satellites because the cost of making them and launching them is less than $100,000 from start to finish, that suddenly it's no longer a insurmountable hurdle for people in far more walks of life than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I do think what Victor was saying about demystifying space is really what us at the foundation try to do. I like to say we're trying to make space boring, because once it's boring, then people believe they can do it. Nobody goes out and brags about starting a business that is in a mountain or in a jungle or in a city. They just start a business where they're at, doing something that they see a need for, and wherever it happens to be is where it happens to be. And it's time to make space like that, that it's just another place where humans are headed, humans have been, and we're gonna take the opportunity as it comes. So the presentation I've got here is about some of the ways we look at the policy work we do here in the US and in collaboration with others around the world. We are a largely US focused nonprofit right now. We're working right now to develop new financial tools for the US space economy and workforce development pipelines for skilled tradespeople to get into the space economy. But with both of our sort of main initiatives, they have a starting in America and building out mentality. And so we collaborate extensively. I recently talked to some colleagues in Japan, others in the European Space Agency, about making sure what we're doing is meshed with what others around the world are doing, and that anything we're building is able to be used and collaborated with without creating this sort of more barriers to cooperation. I have this chart up here, and if you've taken marketing classes, some of them may look familiar, but I like to put this up at the start of my presentations because space is cool right now. It's big. Jeff Bezos just went up. We're seeing commercial astronauts taking off at a fairly regular basis. Hundreds of launches are happening around the world every year. And it's not just governments. It's schools, it's private citizens, it's companies. And so we've reached this point where it probably last happened during the Apollo era, when we all believed that space was about to be the next big thing, that space was going to be where we were living in a few years. And we reached this peak of excitement, but the technology and the infrastructure wasn't there to support it. And we're nearing a similar point now where there is a lot of excitement and a lot of hype, but some of the fundamental pieces that underpin ground economic sectors are just not there. The investment tools that are used to finance the creation of seaports and roads, the sort of loans and bonds that are used around the world, don't exist for space. Some countries have some limited tools like that, but for the most part, the majority of investment into space that is not governmental happens through equity financing or very rich people investing. And so without having those more traditional tools where companies are able to go get a loan to finance expansion, there's a real risk that there will be a backsliding of the capabilities as the sort of expectations meet the hype. And so I think one of the things we're working on, what Robert has talked a lot about working on, is smoothing that out and making sure there's a clear path to success. We look at two main tools to doing this when we're talking with politicians here in the States. And these really are two main categories that are fairly universal, because ultimately in democratic countries, politicians are concerned about ensuring people have work and that the money exists to finance companies and the economy. And so rather than taking the approach of trying to get millions of people to sign a petition or march in the street, we've addressed these sort of key pillars and motivators of the decision makers themselves, which ultimately end up benefiting the rest of us immensely. On the workforce development side, there's this sentiment that has existed for a very long time in the space community that it's rocket scientists and these sort of elite of elite who are able to be a part. It's almost like you need to win an Olympic gold medal 3 or 4 times, and then you get to be an astronaut if you're lucky. And that has created a sense where kids don't think they can truly be a part of space when they're growing up, that young people, as they come out of school, they may have a passion for space, but there's this perception that it's not going to fit with their interests and needs. And so that's created this sort of one size fits all mindset, but that's not how workforce development works anywhere else in the world. Everywhere else, it's a pyramid where skilled laborers do the work of building what engineers design, and the engineers are designing what the scientists invent. But in space, it seems to be all scientists, and there's none of the skilled labor that does the building, at least to the vast majority of the public. And so that is a clear gap in many of the major space countries and around the world. And so what we're working to do in the US is create a system that enables the skilled trades, the welders, the electricians, the machine workers, those manufacturing related trades, those logistics related trades, creating a pathway to certify the schools and those programs that do the training as being ready for space. It turns out the vast majority of these programs for space look a lot like other manufacturing. And it's not a lot of difference between making an airplane, making a car, and making a rocket. Now, no doubt there is a ton of difference in inventing the cutting edge and the newest and most delicate of instruments and machinery. But as we enter this new phase in the space economy, it's less about making the custom-made, fancy, one-of-a-kind systems, but more about mass production and creating pathways for reproducing these at scale and as cheaply as possible. Because when you have companies putting up thousands and tens of thousands of satellites, it doesn't make sense to do $1 billion satellite as your first one and then try to build from there. Instead, these are meant to be cheap, disposable, and as a result, need hundreds and thousands of workers to do the building. And so what we have found is there's a lack of between communities and companies. The communities want these new high-tech space companies to come to set up shop, but they don't trust that that's really going to happen. And the companies, on the other hand, need workers that they can depend on to do the making that they need but they need the community to provide those first. And so there's almost a waiting game of who will make the first move. Will the company move first? Will the community create the workers? And so what we've started doing is creating the bridge to build that trust between the companies and the communities, and saying, we want to work with the communities, the schools, to deliver the message from companies that these are the programs that we need. You build them and we will come. And it seems like a relatively simple proposition. And at the end of the day, it is, because we're not at a phase in this new economy's growth when things need to be terribly complicated. And that is an exciting time to be here, because that means people like me who are not very good at math, not particularly great at science, get to be a part of something that I've loved my entire life, that I dreamed of going to space as a kid, and now I'm working to make that a reality for my kids. That's something that I want to make sure is possible for others just like me. And so the solution that we've developed and what we're taking around the US, and what we're talking about here, is a network of schools. And so we've started connecting those schools who are good at rocket body manufacturing or space certified electronics, connecting those with the communities who are trying to grow their base in the space community, and bringing in those expert trainers to train the teachers in these communities and prepare the schools. And then we certify them, those new schools, as being space ready, and then repeat the cycle, building out from the next community over, the neighbors down the road. And the beauty of this is, because it's not cutting edge physics, because it's not designing the next microchip, most of the educational content stays the same. What the expert trainers originally create to train the first group of students can be used across this entire network of schools, cutting down the cost of starting this up. And as we've started moving forward with this, we've began to get the industry to realize that the faster that they adopt these new communities and show that they're buying into what the schools are training, the more students are willing to take the risk and jump into, in many cases, what sounds like science fiction jobs of space welding. And so it's created this virtuous cycle that has gotten to the point in some communities where entire classes at these technical colleges are being hired on graduation day. And in many cases, there's competition for the graduates because the technical colleges cannot train the workers fast enough. On the financial tool side, we hear a lot in the press about billionaire investments, new money coming into the space economy, and this sort of excitement around how much money there is available. I participated in an event that was put on by a European group a few weeks ago, and they talked about how in the US, there's so much money available for space. And then later that day, I talked with a handful of US companies who were complaining about how they couldn't get any financing, and the owners of the company were having to mortgage their homes in order to keep the company afloat. And it highlighted this sort of perception that, this problem that there is a overwhelming amount of new investment and that is coming from the private sector that enables all this new growth. NASA's budget has been largely consistent and has continued to do this cutting edge exploration work. And Space Force has just started up in the US Defense Department and has started taking on a lot of different roles in security. But ultimately, there is no unifying entity that does the civil background work. Nothing that invests in what I like to call the roads and sewers and power for space. Instead, it's the explorers, the military, and these entrepreneurs all seeming to go their separate ways, and there's a lack of this unifying feature. And there's some charts here with numbers that they're not important, other than to say there is a lot of money going into space, but it's not evenly distributed. Most of it goes to a handful of companies. Most of it goes to a handful of specific topics like internet and imaging. And so there still is a lack of long-term focus and long-term vision for financing the space economy. And that is something we're trying to fix and that others around the world have also looked at, because ultimately those long-term infrastructure related investments are what pay off better than anything else that you could put that money towards. There's extensive studies from World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and dozens of other research institutes that look at how different types of government spending is done. And they consistently find that money invested in long-term capital intensive infrastructure projects pays off far greater than any other investment a government can make. And it pays off in enduring jobs that are benefit the entire community and sustained economic growth over a long period of time. Now, what we like to talk about is building new infrastructure in new explored areas to capture new resources and new economic opportunities is always better than repairing the old. Sure, when you repair or expand old infrastructure, it enables new forms of commerce, it enables better and smoother operations. But as in the example of GPS here, a relatively small amount of investment in basically permanent space infrastructure has created a 1,000-fold nearly multiplier effect over its lifespan. And these are the sorts of investments that when Robert is talking about making a spaceport in Ecuador, in building these connections and ties, these long-term components of integrating the Ecuadorian economy into the space economy, those are the sorts of payoffs that he is talking about, and he has seen why he is able to get so excited, because this is amazing, and you're able to make that sort of long-term impact in an exciting high-tech field. And so one of the ways we're looking to jumpstart that long-term investment in the US is creating a public-private partnership that would be an infrastructure development corporation that would use loan guarantees and other tools to lower the risk for private investors as they take these capital intensive projects on. Right now, most of the major investment firms around the world don't invest in space because they don't know how to measure the risk. They might be able to tell you what the output of a copper mine in Chile will be in 70 years from now, but they have no idea what's going to happen in space tomorrow. And it's just because they've never done it and it's new. And so long as they can't quantify that risk, they're scared of investing in it. And so tools like this help buy that risk down for them at a relatively small cost to the government, and thereby unlock entirely new sources of financing for some of these larger projects. And so I want to end by talking about how do you get involved in shaping this space policy? When we talk, we generally group things into three categories. If you are running a business or a member of an educational organization or academia, make partnerships. You might not be in a space-related field, you don't think. But as Robert was talking about, a banana company looking to use some of the benefits of space imaging, it turns out you just may not know you're in a space company yet. And so forge those ties, ask the questions, how can space do this? How can it help me? And reach across to find those partnerships. If you're in the public, connect with businesses that have a vested interest in working in space, who may not know that they're space companies yet, and partner with them to advocate to politicians, to local leaders, and join your voices with them to amplify it. And then if you are still in school, if you don't necessarily have good ties to businesses, join with those educational groups and create the ideas that the rest of us can use. Because we're going to refer to the work you do, and we need it. And so just because you don't fall into one of the other categories, you don't think you're powerful enough or important enough, doesn't mean you don't have an idea worth exploring. And explore it. Do it with a school, do it on your own. That's the sort of thing that we need more of. And so I think I'll leave it there. And I think we can open it for questions.
Tim, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Amazing insights. Definitely thinking about the experience that you bring and how you have translated that into actionable opportunities in the United States. And that's something very, very exciting. So right now, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat. There's one comment. Let me read it out loud. And we have from Marcos here, he's stating that, for example, the state is always looking to educate its population, and regarding the tools for private companies, that they have the potential to be a dynamo for the local industry. And that way it contributes to the democratization of space, and it also adds that space topics, themes, acquire more credibility and seriousness. And regarding the investment part, that's something that develops in the future. So in the public sector, so that's also very good. So that's a great comment from Marcos. That's very good. And Victor, I have a question for you. How does politics play into this? Because you worked before and you went through a process when Ecuador signed the agreement for trade with the European Union. And at that time, I can imagine that was very challenging, and a lot of people had different opinions on how beneficial it was or how it wasn't. How can you bring people together in that level of discussion that sometimes topics can be very polarized?
The answer is when they have clear the benefits. So all the discussion, all the politics that it could be in at the discussion, it's clear when they really know what are the benefits of the accord. So in this thing, it's the same. It's in another scale, but it's the same. If they break their ideas about what is space investigation, technology, whatever, and they only focus on the figures, the benefits, then they are being would say un agente económico. They're being racional. So that's the point. When you take off all the not the patient, but you have another kind of analysis. No, I like a lot that scheme that Kim showed about the how to use some tools to attract investors. So the money does not have to come from only from state or from government, from the private, and they have to see it like a business. It's a business. So if they see it as a business and profit and so on, they're going to invest in them. With government, it's the same. If they think, they look that that's an opportunity for people to have work, to develop the country, to have a better economy, okay, they will go on that.
Yeah, I want to build on that and say, if you're ever in a situation where you feel like the politicians are not listening and you're showing them the benefit, the problem is likely that you're looking too far. Often these politicians only have a year or two to get things done before they go back to an election. And so when we're talking 10 years, 15 years in the future, that's 5 political lifetimes. And so narrowing that window down and saying, in the next 2 years, these are the benefits. And there's always a way to narrow that down and talk about that and make that case. It may not be as big, may not be as exciting, but ultimately that's the way that they talk day in and day out. And so you have to speak that language.
That's great, Tim, because thinking about the long term, and the short term, because people's priorities sometimes are just short base. I need to finish my quarter, I need to produce my results, and that's all I want to discuss and talk right now. And that's how companies sometimes and politicians work, and everybody works with regards to that. And now I would like to see if you have questions for each other. Maybe Victor, you have a question for Tim. Tim, you would like to ask Victor a question?
Yeah. Sorry.
Go on.
So when you were negotiating the deal between EU and Ecuador, what would be, or how could we learn from that and apply it to the current effort to integrate Ecuador into the space economy more?
Okay, I think three main ideas. One of them is that what you have said, in terms of short term for politics. I remember that we were discussing that agreement for almost 10 years. And then we have to finish it. We have a deadline of 6 months or so on, a year. And we accomplished when no one thinks we could do it. And that was because we landed the ideas for the politicians in terms of their period, their term of government. So they say, okay, at the end of this year, that is the end of your government, you are going to complete this, and this is going to be in your history of something like that. I mean, something like a joke, but that was very important to accomplish this idea. So I take that idea that you share with us, and I say yes, that's okay. The second one is to like I said, to show the benefits, to show the figures, the people, common people. Maybe the discussion there is difficult, so much difficult than the government, because there's no one, there's a lot of people with no head, with no, they are not in groups. They're nowadays everyone takes their phone and Twitter said whatever, and everyone have a different idea. So the other chapter was to communicate in a right way to plain people. So when the general opinion is okay, this is a good thing, this is something valuable, they also knock the door of the politicians. So politicians say, okay, maybe I don't understand, or maybe they don't care about that, but I care about both. So okay, both are important for them, and go on. that was the other. And the third one, and the third idea, it's about the companies. So at the end of those 10 years, we go through the goal, because companies, private companies, understand that they have to be involved in the process. You know, they have to involve it. They at the beginning they say, okay, no, that's about government, some politicians, some people, some economy, some whatever, but not get involved. So they get involved. They it's not only a thing or a matter of money. Not only a matter of money, but it's to be involved in the process. To share their vision, to share figures, numbers, indicators. So they have the data, the real data, and they could explain better, as I said in my presentation, the benefits of one of these kind of projects.
Perfect. And one thing, Tim, that I wanted to ask is, as you go through this journey with your projects and your organization, how much do you compromise? Because I'm sure that you started with a vision that is sometimes very different from the road that you have to walk. So how do you balance that so you don't lose your essence?
Yeah, so the only way that I know to get anything done is ultimately to compromise. And so that means whenever I start, we've had to be very clear about what it is that we ultimately want. And so for instance, for space financing, we want new ways of investing in the space economy. If that looks like we pile turtles up until they make money magically, okay. I don't know how that's going to happen, but it might. If it is our plan, great. If it is someone else's plan, great. And so having that first principle that we can always come back to and ask, is this true to it or not? That has been key in what we're doing, because you're right. The plan we have right now in front of Congress here is probably on version 43 or 44. And we like that, because that means we've had 44 better ideas come in that have helped make this better. But ultimately, there have been points along the way where we've had to say, no, that will go the opposite direction. And that may be of use, but it's not something we can do right now.
Thank you, Tim. Victor, when you start thinking about all the actors that you mentioned and how to get them on board, you mentioned academia, the other stakeholders, not only the government, and you talk about the benefits and the interaction. Do you think that sometimes there might be conflict about how these different actors behave or will react based on competing interests, or not necessarily?
I think no. No at the beginning. If you have we have the will have to start to go on. That's the idea that I have. So at the beginning, maybe that's not relevant. If the car is going, if the wheel is running, maybe that kind of different interest. But at the beginning, I think it's important to build a common vision, and that's easy when you are starting. You are starting building the idea, the vision. It's more easy to construct it. Not if they have their own plan. So I don't think it's really a problem. And also, if I may ask the team, how do you see the opportunities for countries like us, for like Latin American countries, or a tropical agricultural country like us? Really are opportunities for us, and that in aerospace technology and so on. What do you think?
Oh, I think definitely, whether it is manufacturing and positioning yourself as a high quality, low cost center for manufacturing some of these aerospace systems, whether it is being positioned on the equator and having the ability to launch into higher orbits with less fuel. Both of those are natural fits, pairing the almost 9% of the Ecuadorian economy that works in manufacturing with the geography is a natural fit for the sort of full space going all the way up. But when you look at the point-to-point suborbital or the high-speed transit, opening up new avenues for logistics, now you've got the opportunity to create a gateway for regional partners to move high-speed cargo between US and Latin America, with making Ecuador a hub of that. And then there's the example that Robert gave earlier, where existing industries can leverage satellite-based information and technology to improve what's already happening. In some cases, that may mean investing in indigenous and organic space capabilities. In others, that may mean partnering with existing companies that already have it. And so in each one of those paths, there's unique opportunities that are there for the taking. It's just a matter of connecting those existing opportunities, existing workers, and existing companies to space.
One thing that's interesting, Tim, now that you mentioned that, especially when you look at financing and opening new markets, American companies and space companies want to sell more, and they want to find new customers to sell their products and services. And in countries like Ecuador and all across Latin America, we're eager for technology to help us with our productivity. So just thinking those big concepts, there's a natural match to be made somehow. And the question is how to make it happen, when you can attract the talent, the capital with the need, in this case, as Victor was saying originally in his presentation, the supply and demand. And some programs that have been done before has been condonation of debt. So that money can be reinvested in new activities, in new assets. So that could also be an interesting way of thinking about how the space economy, especially for integrating new countries like Ecuador and others, where the debt that they owe the United States or other European countries, as it is serviced and paid, it can save in this case to buy new technology, new satellites, new data. So that's an interesting way of thinking about how new startups in America can benefit because they'll have a specific customer base that is ready to buy because the funds are already there because they're paid for. And the United States government just gives it back and provides the link between those companies. So that's something to think about as you go forward with your plans and start thinking in a more global manner, Tim. So that could be something very interesting to apply. Does anybody else has any questions in the group? Please feel free to write your comments. You just mentioned in the chat that the Guayaquil Space Society has a YouTube page that is serviced by our member, Marcos Moreira. So I just definitely want to say thank you, Marcos, for providing the service and keeping the page updated. And we have all our videos and recordings from our previous sessions, so you can go back and watch them. And the Guayaquil Space Society is it's a free organization, it's free of charge, so anybody can become a member. I'll put my email here in the chat, so if you have any questions you want to write or participate or have suggestions for future events, you can definitely go ahead and do so. And Victor, do you have any other closing comments or questions that you would like to add?
No, I'm thinking about what you said, how depth could be used to also to boost this industry. No, I was thinking in what Italy have done in Ecuador about that. Maybe we have to start with building capabilities, as Tim said in his presentation. Schools, academies, all creating the right kind of knowledge for working on that camp. I don't know. Only to thank you, Robert and team, for the invitation and all the people that has been connected in this 2 hour and a half, and that is always open to contribute to the initiative, and we were here.
Thank you, Victor. And as I was telling Victor before the event started, there was this company in Italy who sent cocoa beans to space, and they make chocolate. And the idea that they did that was to see how the taste and the smell of the chocolate would change. So it was a very interesting project about how that was done. And they got their cocoa beans from Mexico and Central America. So I think that definitely opens up collaboration of research, product branding, and how the commodities that are exported from Latin America and other countries around the world, and they go to the first world countries, find themselves in the table of customers, and how this transformative process and learning can definitely lead to more opportunities. Maybe we can start thinking about how coffee in Honduras can definitely be something very interesting, and how other products, can definitely be making a big difference. So with that, I do want to say thank you. Tim, do you want to say any last words for the public?
This was a fantastic time, Robert. Thank you, Victor. It was a true pleasure. Yeah, I'm excited to watch and hear more about what you all are doing down there. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you, everybody, for participating. We wish you the best. It's been great having you. Take much care. We'll see you next month. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.